You ever try to fight a fiery demon from another dimension while suffering a midlife crisis and a hand trimmer? On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss the 2007 animated movie Doctor Strange. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and we are in the midst of the month of aniMAYtion, where we talk everything animated for an entire month. And today we are talking about the 2007 animated movie Doctor Strange. Man, it's amazing to think that this was something that came out before the MCU even existed. But let me get you to my co-host. Joining me today is the man whose third eye is always open when it comes to pop culture. From Pop Culture Roulette, it's Nicholas Pepin.
How's it going?
It's going good. Could you believe this movie came out August 14th of 2007?
Right.
So almost a full year before Iron Man started the MCU.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. And then it quickly, because the MCU became what it was, got forgotten.
Yes. And it's crazy to go back and watch it. You know, of course, Doctor Strange is going to look like Doctor Strange. But to see Wong and Mordo after we've now seen them in the MCU, it's like, it's not right. Like, no. This isn't what they're supposed to look like. I mean, let's just ignore what they look like in the comics. But we're used to seeing Benedict Wong as Wong. And so seeing this gray-haired man, white man almost, play as a animated version of Wong, it didn't really work for me. But this was the fourth film of Marvel's big animated features that started with Ultimate Avengers, which you and I have discussed on this show before.
Right.
And then they also did The Invincible Iron Man and Thor Tales of Asgard. Which we'll get around to one day, but that, if I remember right, because it's been a while, that one wasn't good. But
this one was?
Well, I will say I think it's better than Tales from Asgard, but we'll get more into that. Of course, this is, an animated film, so you don't expect something extremely long. In fact, it is only 76 minutes. I watched it today, and when it ended, Bethany, who was sitting in the living room with me, but wasn't really paying any attention. But when it ended, she went, "Oh, that was short." so it has at least that going for it. But do you recall the first time you saw this animated Doctor Strange?
This was in my period of single and a job and living in I think this was when I moved back from Wisconsin back to DC. So I was living in my parents' basement. So I had expendable income.
Yeah. So you just went and snatched it.
So I just went and grabbed it as soon as it came out. And I remember enjoying it. I remember I was like, wow, this was good. Because like you said, I didn't know it was coming a year later,
Yeah. No, same thing with me. This was before I was married. And so, yeah, when these started coming out, Ultimate Avengers and all these Marvel movies, I was extremely interested. So yeah, I went to probably Walmart and snatched it up not long after it had gotten released on DVD. And if I remember right, I think I enjoyed it. I didn't know a lot about Doctor Strange. Again, I've said several times I'm not as big on Marvel as I am on DC. So I didn't know a lot about Doctor Strange, but I would say I was very interested and really enjoyed it. But yeah, it is weird watching it now with what we now have with the MCU. And even with animated stuff we have now, because they base the animated stuff now off of what we have in the MCU.
Correct.
So yeah, it's almost like a different era. It's like when you go from the golden age, the silver age, to the bronze age and the modern age of comics. Like it's almost like doing that. Like this is, pre-MCU, whatever age we want to call that. Seeing the different incarnations of these characters. So But I never understand how directing works in animation, but this movie had 3 directors, technically 4. The 3 that are listed as director are Patrick Archibald, J. Oliva, or Olivia, but there's no other I, so I'm going to guess Oliva, and then Richard Sebast. All 3 of those are well known in comics and animation. Patrick Archibald was the storyboard artist for the Disney XD shows like Earth's Mightiest Heroes and Hulk and the Agents of Smash. Jay Oliva did DC stuff. He also directed the Flashpoint Paradox and The Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
But then I also found out that he was the storyboard artist for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
All right.
And then Richard Sebast worked on TV animation. He worked on Batman the Animated Series and Gargoyles, 2 of my favorites.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Were you familiar with any of those names, or are you impressed by their resume?
I'm more impressed by their resume. I didn't look up their name. If I had done any research, I would have been like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm very familiar with all of their work outside of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was only Jay Olivia who I guess would continue to be a director, although working for DC. And then after the 3 of them are named as director, I don't know if you saw this in the opening credits, then a guy named Frank Power is named as a supervising director. And I don't know what that means. So, like, did they not have trust in these 3 people, so they got another guy who...
Like you said, I don't really know how animation works when it comes to who's directing and how
directing works.
How directing works when it comes to animation. Like, I understand it with live action.
Yeah.
Because, but like animating, like, what are you're not standing in the room going, no, draw that. Yeah. No, draw that.
But I guess they picked him because he did have animation directing experience. Because I found out he directed episodes of X-Men, the animated series, Batman, the animated series, and he was a producer on the old Incredible Hulk animated series.
Okay.
I don't think the one from the 60s, probably the one from the 90s. I guess that's why he was the supervising director, because the other 3 didn't have directing experience. I don't know. I just thought that was weird. I've never seen that before. So if you know, let us know. And then the writer of this movie, I did recognize the name, Greg Johnson, and then I found out why. It's because he wrote all of the Marvel animated features. He wrote Ultimate Avengers, he wrote Invincible Iron Man, he wrote Thor's Tales of Asgard. Then I also found out he was the head writer of the X-Men Evolution animated show.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't get... the directing thing still puzzles me. I don't understand what a director does in animation. I probably should sit and research that one day. What does a director do in an animated movie, and why do you need so many directors? But let's go ahead and get into this with our comic book connection.
This is the comic book connection theme.
This movie draws inspiration from several key comic book sources. It begins with the foundational origin in Strange Tales number 110 back in 1963, where Dr. Stephen Strange is introduced as an arrogant neurosurgeon who seeks out the Ancient One in the Himalayas to heal his damaged hands, only to be drawn into a mystical battle that transforms him into Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. His ongoing conflict with Baron Mordo begins in the very next episode, Strange Tales 111, or issue I should say, and Dormammu makes his first appearance in Strange Tales number 126, just a few months later. The film also echoes themes and character dynamics seen in a storyline called Doctor Strange the Oath, which was just a few months before this movie, that explores Strange's dual identity as both a healer and a mystic. It adds emotional layers to his relationship with Wong and tests his commitment to doing what's right, even in a world governed with gray morality. The Eye of Agamotto and the Sanctum Sanctorum are all pulled from earlier foundational stories of Doctor Strange, providing the film a solid visual and thematic grounding in the source material. While some of the narrative took some shortcuts, the movie still feels like a faithful snapshot of Doctor Strange's comic book world as it existed. So, what was your knowledge with, of course, we got the movie later with Benedict Cumberbatch, but what was your knowledge prior to all of this about Doctor Strange? Like I said, I didn't know a lot.
When I got back into comics, Doctor Strange, I kind of gravitated towards Doctor Strange. So I had read a lot of the books. I've kind of gone back and read some of the original stuff, not as much. So I have a slightly more than passing familiarity with it. And like you said, the story, while it truncates quite a bit of it, does stay relatively faithful to the origin. I mean, it updates a little bit, and just like everything, you can't leave everything set in the 60s, so you got to update it, and people have cell phones or can travel faster,
Yeah.
But for an animated movie in this time frame where they would, sometimes just do a character and name only, I gotta give them credit for at least trying to stay somewhat faithful.
Yeah, and I would say I did forget to mention that Doctor Strange, probably because you just already know, but Doctor Strange was a Steve Ditko creation.
Yeah.
Who also, along with Stan Lee, created Spider-Man and had contributions to many of the other Marvel characters like Iron Man and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't know an awful lot about his origin. And so honestly, when I saw this movie, I actually thought that his origin was just, a guy finds out he can do magic powers and all that. I didn't know anything about the car crash and him losing the ability of his hands. It was this movie that actually introduced me to all of that. That was how little I knew of Doctor Strange. I just knew of the character. I didn't really know an awful lot of the actual creation of Doctor Strange. So I did like that, this does give you a nice little introduction to the character. But let's get into the cast and talk about how well they did. So first off, Doctor Strange himself, one of the heroes that doesn't actually use a superhero name. His name is Doctor Strange, voiced here by Bryce Johnson, who I really had to look up. Did not recognize him. Found out that he was in he was in 2 horror movies that I am familiar with. One is Willow Creek, and the other one is Terrifier 3, which I will admit I haven't seen yet, but I at least know what it is. I then found out that he also played a recurring character on Pretty Little Liars, and a show that I remember being on television but never watched, Popular. And then also found out that he would later voice Bruce Banner in Hulk Versus, another one of the Marvel animated features. But what were your thoughts of Bryce Johnson in the vocal role of Doctor Strange?
I'm trying to get myself back into how I thought of it before Benedict Cumberbatch, because now that's all I can hear. You know, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just, I don't know. It just felt kind of not lifeless, but I don't know. It just didn't have the kind of gravitas that I would think that Doctor Strange should have.
The thing is that could almost be a reoccurring theme throughout all of these performances. I don't know if it was just the animation didn't really work with the vocal acting, but there was something that seemed disconnected about the look of the characters and the voices we were hearing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for all of them. But let's go ahead and move on. I got Wong listed next, voiced by, and I apologize for butchering this last name, Paul Nakauchi, who is mainly a video game voice actor from looking up his resume. Probably the most recognizable thing was he voiced Hanzo in the Overwatch series. Then I recognized a name right off the bat. Baron Mordo is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson.
Yeah, that one I immediately knew.
Yeah, I mean, he's the Joker in the Batman animated show. He took over the voice of Dr. Hibbert on The Simpsons. He was Trigon on the original Teen Titans animated series. And he's done voices on Family Guy, American Dad, Grimsburg more recently. He was in Super Mario Brothers movie that just came out. Probably for a lot of people will recognize he was Captain Gantu in Lilo and Stitch.
I mean, for somebody like Kevin Michael Richardson, it might be easier to name the cartoons he hasn't been in.
Hasn't been in, yeah. Yeah. And then there's a couple others. I'll go ahead and just jump to them because there's really, other than Doctor Strange, everybody else is kind of a side character. But Oliver, who was Strange's like doctor friend that you just see in like that one scene, he's voiced by Fred. I always pronounce his last name wrong. I think you can pronounce it better than I can.
Tadashore?
Yes, he was voiced by him. Who I immediately go, hey, that's the Hulk.
Yeah, he's in the same boat as Kevin Michael Richardson. Like he's just in everything.
Yeah. Again, I just immediately go, pick a Marvel movie. Chances are he's the voice of the Hulk, or animated TV show. He's the voice of the Hulk, like more likely than not. And then Doctor Strange's sister April is voiced by Tara Strong, who once again you could probably go through.
Yeah,
it'd be shorter list of what she hasn't done. But for those of you who don't know Tara Strong, she famously has voiced
this show.
Yeah, true. But she has famously voiced Harley Quinn, Raven, Timmy Turner on Fairly Odd Parents. She was Bubbles on Powerpuff Girls. I mean, again, it's probably shorter to list the things that she hasn't been in. And then you got the Ancient One, voiced by Michael Yama, who is a character actor who was actually in the movie Pearl Harbor, but he also has done several animated voices. And then one that I was surprised by when I looked him up, Dormammu is voiced by Jonathan Adams. And as soon as his picture popped up, I was like, I would not have ever guessed that, because I was a big fan of the sitcom Last Man Standing with Tim Allen.
Yeah,
he was Chuck Laramy, his neighbor, the African American guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's him. He was the voice of Dormammu.
Okay.
And then I found out he's done lots of voice work. He was Martian Manhunter in Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. He was Atrocitus in the Green Lantern animated series. He's voiced both Absorbing Man and Ronan the Accuser on like all of the Disney XD Marvel shows. But no, as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's the dude from Last Man Standing.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was a surprise. Didn't know he was a voice actor, but now I do. But yeah, I mean, to me, and again, I'm kind of on the same page with you. Watching it now after we have the MCU and characters like Wong and Baron Mordo and obviously Doctor Strange and even the Ancient One, and of course Dormammu is also voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch in the movie. To watch this and hear those voices, it just felt weird. Like it felt like they were different characters.
Well, and I don't know about you, but like Kevin Michael Richardson, for me anyway, his voice is so distinct and like recognizable. The voice did not match the look of the character.
Yeah, I can see that.
The rest of them, whatever. It just I thought maybe the directing was off, or but I mean that character. The voice that he used for that character didn't match the character look.
Yeah, but it also didn't match, and again, butchering names, Chiwetel Ejiofor or Ejiofor that played him in Doctor Strange. And again, I apologize for butchering that name. He, of course, was a different take on Mordo.
Right.
But yeah, they just felt like different characters. Like I kept having to remind myself that was Wong as I'm watching this movie.
Yeah.
Like, like they didn't say his name enough. And so I kept having to go, oh yeah, that's Wong. That's supposed to be Wong. And then they've got all these side characters that are sorcerers that were just fodder for the creatures to kill. Like,
yeah. It honestly, like, when it started, I'm like, did I start the movie in the middle?
It does abruptly start.
Right. I mean, it's very much a cold opening, and I was like, wait, what? like, because sometimes my DVD player, like when I'll put a DVD in and I don't play it right away, like it'll want to start the movie.
Yeah.
So then I gotta like, oh yeah, that's right. I gotta stop it and go back to the beginning. And I was like, no, this is just starting. Like I had, yeah, okay, this is weird. But it really, honestly, this movie more than some of the other animated Marvel movies felt like this was a pilot. Like they were setting up for a series that just never took place. Like
no, because I think it was Ultimate Avengers was the only of these Marvel animated movies that actually had a sequel.
Yeah, and
I can't really think of another one that did.
No, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that was an intention that they wrote it that way, or if it was just like I'm so used to them backdoor piloting things by like we're gonna do this movie, and if it works out, we can turn it into a series. If not, it's just a movie. You know, and you know, in this era, this is what it would have been. It would have been one of those like Marvel one shots that if it worked out, it becomes a series. If it didn't, then you know it was just a one shot. But you know, then like I don't know, it felt disjointed from the get go.
Yeah. Well, before we get into it too much, let's go ahead and make a decision for people who have never seen it. Like, should they watch it, or should they just read Doctor Strange comics to get a good bit of the story? So, what say you? Should they watch it or should they read it?
I mean, it's a decent watch, and it does kind of give you a concise, you know, origin, and the origin doesn't deviate enough that like you're like not getting an accurate idea. So like you said, it's 76 minutes. You're in, you're out, and then you go find yourself some books to read and get deeper into.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm probably gonna you know trip my own self up, but like. It's not a bad movie. It's just, I don't know. It's we'll get there.
No, yeah, I have almost the same argument. I would say watch it again. It's only 76 minutes, so like Nicholas said, you're in and you're out. And yes, the comics are going to give you more depth, and it's going to give you more of the mythology. But yeah, it gives you the origin and the beginning of Doctor Strange in a nice little tight, engaging origin story. So yeah, it's a great entry point if you were like me, who didn't know a lot about the character, to learn a little bit more about Doctor Strange, and then go into the books and learn what they left out or what they changed, or get a little bit more of that depth. But I definitely say watch it.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
All right, let's take a trip around the spinner rack, start talking a little bit more about this movie. And as always, we start with our speech bubble, our favorite quote. And I will say I had a hard time with this because I liked almost everything the Ancient One said. Like he gave some of those good classic like kung fu sayings. So I'll go ahead and give, I wrote down a couple, but I'll give the one that I put first was when the Ancient One says, "You can only heal the wounds of the flesh once you have healed the wounds of the soul."
All right.
Deep meaning. Which I 100% agree with. I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. I recently had surgery, and I will say one of the things that helps is just telling yourself, I'm gonna get up today, or I'm gonna, I'm gonna do this today, or whatnot. Trying to get it internally before the external healing occurs. So that was why I put that one first. What quote did you have?
All right, I have to set it up a little bit.
Okay.
So it's when Doctor Strange gets to the castle, and he's agreed to stay on and try to learn. And he says, I don't understand. How am I supposed to use the brushes? Because he's talking about how bad his hands are. And the Angel One looks at him and goes, well, that's between you and the brushes.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I liked a lot of the Ancient Ones. I will say I threw in a random one, Oliver, when he comes in and Strange is like, how'd you know I was here? And he says, when I saw Corey sulking out there, I knew you were in. I just like that because it really helped build the character of Dr. Stephen Strange, the arrogant doctor that he was. I just thought that was a funny little quote. But yeah, no, I just like another one I wrote from the Ancient One, which is a little lengthy, but I like this one too. He said, the space we occupy here on Earth is shared by many others, entire worlds. We are not aware of them, for they exist in separate dimensions. However, each dimension has a gateway, one that leads only to this place, the Sanctum Sanctorum. It is called the Nexus, the center of all other dimensions. As sorcerers, it has become our duty to defend it. And I was just like, well, there's pretty much the entire purpose of Doctor Strange right there. If you want to know who Doctor Strange is in the Marvel Universe, that's it right there. He is a defender of the Nexus. So really important line to help with the origin as well of Doctor Strange. You got any more, or was that the only one you had?
That was the only one I could really narrow down.
All right, well, moving on into our moving panel, a scene that we felt just like it was right out of a comic, or one that we just enjoyed. What did you have for that? Any particular scene?
The car crash. I don't remember the car crash involving ghost or ghostly visions from the comic book, but the car crash was pretty much straight out of the book.
Yeah, I liked that they kind of made it as if Stephen Strange already had a bit of a gift to him. The fact that he could have these visions, the fact that he could see the sorcerers, even though they were under a spell of invisibility. I kind of liked that aspect. But this might be a little morbid, but my favorite scene was actually the battle with the flying piranha creatures.
Oh yeah.
Because that was terrifying.
This was a couple years after Pitch Black, but do those creatures kind of look like miniature versions of the Pitch Black creatures?
I didn't even think about that.
It just, literally just, like, as you were talking about it, like, I was like, that's why they look so familiar, because I just did that Horror Through the Decades on Pitch Black last October.
It's been a minute since I've seen Pitch Black, but now that you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, they might actually be, but man, just them, the first thing we see is them going into the taxi and attacking the taxi driver, and then you see the rear view mirror and he's just skeleton.
Yeah.
And then they do that a couple other times with some of the sorcerers. Then there's that one sorcerer, they don't even leave a skeleton. They attack him up in the air and he's just gone. And I got to tell you, part of me was like, I really wonder if they could pull something like that off in live action.
Yeah, maybe. But
now that you're saying Pitch Black, I'm going, maybe if I go back and watch that, it could be very similar. But man, yeah, I don't know. It might be a morbid side of me, but something like that just really interested me. So that's what it was for me. But were there any other scenes that you liked or stuck out to you?
I don't know if this is the section for it or not, but there was a throwaway line early that I'm like, wait a minute, what, did they just say that? They're walking around the hospital and all of a sudden you hear one of the intercom goes, Dr. Donald Blake to the, and then you see a blonde man with a cane, like, walk through the back of the screen. I'm like, oh, so Thor was at the same hospital that Doctor Strange was at.
No, yeah, absolutely intentional. Absolutely intentional. Yeah, that was cool. And I always enjoy things like that when they make reference to other things. or other properties. Which, Marvel, it makes sense.
Right,
They're supposed to all, and you say they work at the same hospital. I mean, Marvel pretty much every superhero in Marvel lives in New York. So it would make sense.
Yeah.
Even though the MCU tried to scatter them about the United States, but we know that in the comics they're all in New York. I do want to talk about, since this was an origin story and it was the way I was kind of introduced to most of his origin, and that is the one big major change, which if you're like me and you're not familiar with Doctor Strange's origin, or at least, when I originally saw this, I wasn't. The story they created, and it was entirely created for this movie, about his sister.
Which they also changed the name of.
Well, he doesn't have a sister in the comic books.
Yes, he does. It's just they changed her name. But it's not. It has nothing to do with the origin.
Okay. I never knew he had a sister. I knew there was one storyline in which he had a brother.
Yeah, no, he had. I don't even remember what they changed the name from, but yeah, it was like there was no reason for it, but they did it anyway. But yeah, they did create that storyline out of thin air, but
Okay. So, I mean, do you know anything about what it is in the comics? Because clearly I do not.
I don't remember.
Okay, I did just do a quick look up. Apparently her name was Donna Strange.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't look like she... It looks like she died of just... Oh, it was the It's a Wonderful Life. She died by falling into a frozen lake.
Oh, okay.
And Stephen was unable to save her. So... And that is why he decided to become a surgeon? Okay. I think the animated movie makes a better story.
Yeah, I don't remember that being... that must have been like a later edition. Because I don't know.
I will say that this is based off of... This might be from the movie version. It says it's a fixed point in time for Stephen Strange in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, when I did my little bit of research, I couldn't find that he had a sister. But now I see here. Okay, here's another one. Looking this stuff up. So Donna Strange. So it's still Donna Strange. Here she is in the comics right now. She called her brother Stevie. So she suffered an injury. It doesn't say right here why, unless I can dig a little bit further. Drove lake, Stevens from the shore. So they were swimming, so it wasn't a frozen lake. So she got a cramp and no longer able to swim. She called out for help before sinking beneath the surface of the lake, even as her friends and her brother tried to save her. In search for his sister, Stephen repeatedly dived deep to the bottom of the lake, but after more than 30 minutes had passed, he gave up. So there you go. And apparently this death occurred in Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme number 45 in July of 1992. So that's probably why I didn't find it, because I was looking through the origin stories.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think the sister was originally one of the original, the 1960s version of the origin story. It might have been one of those retcon things that they did, but...
So that's why I couldn't find it. But hey, she did have a sister, but you are correct. Completely different name. I will still say, even after reading that, I kind of think the story in the movie creates more of an emotional,
Well, when you don't...
gives him a deeper motivation for why he became a doctor.
Yeah, when you don't have, decades of time to build up the reasoning and you only have a couple minutes, it's easier to do that and create that story. So I get why the movie did it,
Yeah. But even if they were to have told the story and she drowned, why would drowning make you want to be a doctor?
Yeah, you would think drowning would make you want to be like an EMT or...
Yeah. Or a lifeguard or... Yeah, something like that. But I think, having her have, an ailment was a little bit better of a story. So I think it was a good change. it at least gives him a reason for why he chose to be a doctor, which is something that we didn't have originally. He just, in the original story, he's just an arrogant doctor. Like, that was it. There was this gave him a reason as to why he was a doctor. So I kind of like that. It also gave him a little bit more empathy, whereas originally he's just this arrogant doctor and he has to learn to be a better person. At least, there was a hint of him already being a better person. So I kind of like that. But we as always, we got to get into the weird science. Did you find anything in this movie that just didn't make sense?
Yes. The one big thing, and I'm sure there's a lot of other little things, but the one big thing that really bugged me this time that I don't think I thought of before, he's climbing up like a sheer rock face.
Yeah.
Because he's in search of somebody to help heal his hands.
His hands, yes.
And I'm like, if this man's hands are so bad he can't open a door handle,
yeah.
How is he
climbing? Yeah. No, I have that one down. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. I thought the same thing. In fact, there's so much that he does that the Ancient One's making him do that I'm just like, how is he doing this with apparently shattered hands? So yeah, there was a lot about that. And yes, I will say there's a lot of little things, but I chalked them up to not so much weird science as I did they just had to abbreviate the story. Like Mordo becoming the bad guy, like it seems to happen so quickly.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of build to it, but I'm like, okay, but that's more story element than it is weird science. Or even Dormammu being the big threat, but he's barely in the movie. Yeah, I mean, you could go into a lot, like how quickly Strange becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. It's pretty much like everybody else dies, and then when the Ancient One dies, yes, he does pass it on to Doctor Strange, but you're almost like, yeah, pretty much him and Wong are your only choices. Like, yeah. But my big one was this one, other than the thing with his hands, was Mordo, the character, is arrogant from the beginning, which is ironic considering that the Ancient One is criticizing Strange for his arrogance and is trying to teach him humility, which made me go, but wait, didn't you also train Mordo? So why is Mordo, who was a previous student of you, why is he just as egotistical? Like, is this supposed to be a fault of Mordo? Or is it a fault in Mordo's training? Did the Ancient One screw that one up? Or is it supposed to show us that humility can't be taught, that it has to be chosen?
Yeah, and that seems more a fault of writing than faulty logic. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it did seem like Mordo was very guilty of everything that Stephen Strange was, I guess,
also guilty of.
I guess that kind of shows us that, like, Strange was able to take the same sin and get better and become the Sorcerer Supreme. And Mordo took it and became a disciple of Dormammu and became became evil. So
yeah,
it's kind of the duality, kind of like, they both had the same problem, and one went the right way, one went the wrong way.
Yeah, which is why, like I said, I kind of lead it to, even though I don't think it comes across very well, it's supposed to show us that being humble is a choice. You can't be taught how to be humble. You have to choose to be humble. You can't just have the arrogance taught out of you. Like, I think that's what's supposed to be, like you're implying. I just don't think it was done very well, which is why it fell as a plot hole, which again I call a weird science when it comes to that. But anything else from the movie that you wanted to discuss? Again, 76 minutes. I don't know how much.
Nope.
Much more there's left for us to discuss.
I've handled all my notes, so
yeah. All right, well then let's get into it. Our final decision: bag it, stack it, or trade it. So, Nicholas, what say you?
Bag it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
what makes it so that special to
wait,
you?
hold on. I think I messed up. I got the order wrong. Bag it, stack it, retreat. Stack it, not bag it.
Okay.
Stack it,
All right.
because it's not bad. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not like I didn't watch it this time and go, oh, this isn't staying in the collection. I was wrong. Because I'll do that occasionally. Pull out an old DVD and I'll watch it and I'll be like, ooh, why did I buy this again?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's the only reason, like, in the absence of the Benedict Cumberbatch live action versions, like, it's watchable, it's fun,
Yeah.
you know, and you can watch it in 76 minutes. It's not bad, but, you know, the other ones exist and they're better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does because we now have a live action Doctor Strange movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. I do think that kind of hinders this a little bit at this point. But I also say stack it. I mean, it is a solid animated adaptation. It gives you the core of who Doctor Strange is. Yeah, the pacing helps that it's only 76 minutes. It could use a little bit more development, as we just discussed. But yeah, if you just need to be introduced to the character, then this is a good good enough introduction to that character. So yeah, I said stack it as well. All right, well, finally we'll get into some recommendations. So is there a comic or another movie, although I kind of feel like maybe that's where Nicholas is going, that you you could watch that either would
I think
replace this or go along with this? So what do you say, Nicholas?
I think we've kind of already recommended it a few times, but yeah, just, I mean, the Benedict Cumberbatch, the origin movie. I mean, I do like Multiverse of Madness, and I definitely saw that I didn't catch it at the time because it's been so long since I watched this. Like, I feel like both Benedict Cumberbatch movies kind of borrowed from this a little bit. Like like the monster going through downtown New York and them having to fight it in Multiverse of Madness. I'm like,
and it being invisible, and he had to reveal it. Yeah,
yeah. I was like, did they do that from the animated movie, or was that from the book, or was that just kind of a complete accident because it seemed like fun, you know?
Yeah.
But
no, I didn't remember that from the movie, and then when I was seeing it, I was like, wait, they did that in Multiverse of Madness. So
yeah,
no, I'm right there with you.
And I would recommend going out and finding some of the. I didn't write down any of the runs, but some of the early to mid 2000 runs of Doctor Strange were pretty good. I mean, he's kind of stopped being Sorcerer Supreme, and other people have kind of taken over, and I'm not sure where he is in that realm right now, but it's Marvel. He'll always get it back at some point,
Yeah, I didn't want to give the Benedict Cumberbatch movie the recommendation because, like you said, I mean, we've kind of mentioned it and people know it exists. People probably didn't know this animated movie existed. So I kind of wanted to go with just more that would help build the story of Doctor Strange. And this is probably what you're talking about. I did find a specific series, which I mentioned in my comic book connections, and that's Doctor Strange the Oath. From 2006, 2007, it wrapped around. That was written by Brian K. Vaughan and art by Marcos Martin. It's a 5-issue miniseries, and it, again, goes into a little bit of depth of Doctor Strange as a character, as him both being a doctor and a sorcerer. We get a little bit more about his ethics. It definitely delves into his relationship with Wong, because Wong has this illness that has come upon him, and Strange finds out that there's a conspiracy behind it, and so again, it builds with that, him being both a doctor and a sorcerer. And yeah, it's Marcos Martin does a great job. It's beautifully illustrated. It's emotionally resonant, and again, it lines with the themes that this animated movie, I believe, was trying to get across. But at the same time, I also, just because even though this is Benedict Cumberbatch related, I do think the episode of What If that is called What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart instead of his hands is another great story to go along with the character of Doctor Strange, because it shows at what point Strange could go too far, and kind of, again, that building of his character. Like, what exactly is it that makes him not go the route that a character like Mordo does in terms of his arrogance and his overuse of his magical abilities. So I wanted to throw that one out there as well. Any last words? Anything else you got you want to say?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Awesome. So here we are at the end of April. We're headed into the summer. You got anything coming up on Pop Culture Roulette you want to share?
No, we don't really have anything planned. We're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants right now. Like, just kind of making it up as we go along. We haven't really planned anything out. So
that is the thing about pop culture, is you can't plan too far in advance, because you never know how the tide will shift. Yeah, but check it out. They've always got great things. They do brackets. They talk about, they group like genre stuff together, and they'll do a whole episode on a particular genre,
and we'll get really weird. We did it a couple, based on when I think this one's coming out. We did back in early April an episode on characters that were green.
There you go. See? Always fun. Y'all talk about Gumby?
Did he come up? I'm sure he came up. Actually, he may not have.
Yeah. He left out a character that's green. All right. Well, thank you, Nicholas, for joining me on this. Always fun. And I do enjoy our month of animation, because sometimes we get little gems like this one that are either forgotten or ones that people never knew about. And I think that this Doctor Strange movie fits into probably both of those categories, because I'm sure people like us who saw it in 2007, unless they own it as part of their collection, probably completely forgot about it. And I'm sure there are people who didn't get into Marvel stuff until the MCU, and so they never knew about it. So I think this was a great one to discuss.
I agree.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. Check out our website, movingpanelspodcast.com, and check out our merchandise at TeePublic. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
This summer on Moving Panels, we're diving headfirst into the twisted, thrilling, and totally unpredictable world of Mark Millar. He's the mind behind some of the most intense, outrageous, and surprisingly heartfelt comics of the 21st century, and we're covering it all. We're breaking down the brutal, bullet-riddled chaos of Wanted. We're tackling the dark superhero dynasty of Jupiter's Legacy. We're getting our red mist on with Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2, but we're not stopping there. This summer series isn't just about the adaptations. We're unpacking Millar's impact on comics and Hollywood, his controversial use of violence, the satire hidden in the bloodshed, and the political and social commentary that runs beneath the mayhem. And once it's all said and done, we're going to crown the best of the Mark Millar adaptations. Which one reigns supreme? Which one missed the mark? You'll have to tune in to find out. So subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts, and don't miss a single episode of our Mark Millar Summer Series right here on Moving Panels.